and then revise.
By beginning, actually doing some research or getting some codes before you begin your writing.
I think, I just did a lot of reading into the pieces, but I think by the time I had, with this piece specifically, I was at an advantage because in my other two classes, I was doing similar research and similar pieces. So this piece kind of ended up, I already had the pieces ready for this piece because in one of my classes I was studying dystopia, and I was writing a piece about dystopia. And I was writing a piece about feminist dystopias. So I already had the information in my mind, and I'd already had the research for that because I was writing and then in my other class, I was writing a piece about toxic masculinity. And I'd already started writing that, and I already started researching that, and I already had that kind of influencing me. So this piece ended up being quite easy to start because I already had the foundational blocks from two other units where I was already doing a heavy amount of reading. So I think this one was, it was, in this case, I didn't have to do a lot of research or a lot of prep because it was already half-baked by the time the assignment rolled around.
Okay. So how did you feel about structuring your second assignments? Did you learn anything from your previous assignment?
So one of the notes I got from my previous assignment was that I should have put the ending as the middle. The event, it would have been better if the event had happened and then, because it was non-fiction, the aftermath was more important to the piece than necessarily the lead up to the event. So then that was in my mind when I was talking about that and making sure that there's a sort of arc in my piece.
So how did you learn it? It was a marker feedback, or you learned from the group discussions?
It was in my mark feedback. So for my essay, my marker said, he said that he really enjoyed the piece. My statement of intent was great. He said that I should have gone into more detail because I was doing expository, so doing diary entries, and he went, you should have really kind of maybe done less diary entries and gone more in detail to each diary entry rather than summarizing. And he also said that the ending, so I kind of left it on a bit of a cliff. And he said you really should have put that ending in the middle and explained the aftermath of that event rather than, so that was my feedback at the end of the piece. So once it was already written, so that was kind of fresh in my mind when I was writing the next piece.
Can you think about any kind of feedback you got from your peers or your family members on your previous assignments that help you with this assignment?
Just, the spacing one, one where people were confused because they didn't know where the character was when everything was happening, and they didn't know, the events kind of blurred a bit to them because they couldn't understand if time had changed or if the character was still standing there, and they went, oh, suddenly he's over here, I didn't realize he'd moved. So that was that was probably the biggest takeaway I had from the workshop, from the first piece. That I went to the second piece was making sure that I knew exactly if my character was where he was and relative to everything else. And then I made sure that there was some sort of, I didn't end on I did end up ending on a weird cliffhanger thing, but that was actually a piece of advice I got from my current workshop. But so I think the things I learned from the feedback from the first piece, where I guess blocking, I don't know if that's a literary term, it's a theatre term, but blocking where the character is in terms of the rest of the environment, and working out the story arc and making sure that the thing that is important happens within the story rather than at the end.
Yeah, okay. And did you get any feedback on your first assignment from external sources such as language learning advisors or, I don't know?
Not on the first one, no. I don't think I got on the second one either, but I genuinely don't know how to, if I how to approach them. I was trying to look into it this time round. But, yeah. Describe language learning.
Like there are some language learning advisors or some actual writing mentors who can help you, which are based in Deakin, actually, Bearwood campus, and we can help you. You have not approached them actually
I haven't, but I think it'll be on my list to do, especially next year for second year.
Okay, so you didn't need their help on this assignment, or you didn't know that there are such kind of actually.
I didn't really know. So like I did look around, but I didn't know where to find them. However, I did have access to my tube. I'll write it down though. I'll write it down for next year. I looked into resources though.
Okay.
This time round, I had my peers as beta readers. So I had two of my peers read my piece a few times as I was writing, which I didn't do with the first piece. With the first piece, it was just me and then the workshop. But yeah, this time around, there was a few steps between my writing my piece and submitting it that weren't me. It was looked by other people and people who pointed out. So yeah, there was definitely a progression in my writing process as far as proofreading and analysis.
And the other question is for your second assignments. How did you make sure that you were responding to the question properly? Actually, I mean, was there any valuable technique you learned from previous assignment?
I think, as far as my feedback went, I answered the first piece, responded to the question really, really well, and then the second piece, by the time I had the workshop quite early on, and then people were already like, this is a perfect example of what I'm responding to as well. I think the premise of my piece was so blatantly relevant to think. It was almost like a literal, the thing was on about how men don't accept femininity in themselves. And society doesn't men have the fear of being a woman. Men are afraid of femininity. And my piece is literally about a society where they sterilize feminine men. So it was just a very clear translation between the piece and the topic. So I think I don't think I was going to struggle with answering the question because the entire piece was the question essentially. But yeah, and then the question, I chose the quote as well. So it had to be inspired from the quote. It didn't have to be the quintessential quote. The question that we get is given after we've written the piece. So, it didn't necessarily have to meet that. You just had to sort of explain how you used the excerpt you used and how and why you chose that, and then you also had to link it to a query that you picked, which was one of 10, it was probably 15 or 20 queries, and then you basically pick that query and then you explain your piece relative to the reading or relative to a theoretical thing either feminism or eco-criticism or colonialism, etc.
Okay, in broadly speaking, what do you think are the features of a good essay like this now, after writing 2 assignments?
I think the thing that got emphasized throughout both of them was the idea of showing, not telling, making sure that every single piece, rely on the fact that the reader's not dumb and that you don't have to give them paragraphs of exposition, rely on the fact that if you